of the Magic Box. I am Tristan Sean Gregson, back here with Kyle Eck. It's only been a few days off, really, for us, because we
fast turnaround here.
Pushed our last episode into the weekend. So not a whole lot has changed, although I guess the biggest news is probably the full Modern Master spoiler for everyone to kind of gawk or scoff at, whatever your opinion may be.
There weren't a ton of cards. In terms of the stuff that hadn't been spoiled already, I think there was like one mythic, and it was Progenitus, and then like one or two rares. It wasn't like a lot of the cards were...
No, I mean...
It was more stuff for like the actual limited format.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, in that moment, the most exciting things were, wow, look at the rarities, and the realization that everyone had where it's like, whoa, 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 Thoughtseize isn't actually in this set.
That was confirmed for a while.
Yeah, but they didn't believe me.
I mean, like...
I told them like 3 weeks ago, and no one...
I mean, you just like look at the numbers on the cards they had spoiled. Unless there was a 99.5.
Math is hard. No one wants to carry dice. We should all have digital playmats. All right, that's what we all have learned.
Kickstarted.
$100,000 is what they want for that project.
Good luck.
Not gonna happen. It's with all best intentions.
$50 a playmat? You know those are free, right? Like they just give them away.
It's an amalgamation. Some playmats are worth a lot.
Sure.
If you put aggressive squirrels on a playmat, bam, worth way more.
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna take a playmat and I'm gonna cut a hole in it.
Okay.
And that's where you set your phone. Give me $100,000. I'll even put an iPod Touch in it for you.
for $50?
For 50. Well, no, you have to also bring me the iPad Touch.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, we could break down the Modern Masters set as far as limited goes, but really, in a nutshell, it's pretty much just like Lorwyn on crack.
Yeah, it's mostly Lorwyn.
So you have giants in red-white, you've got fairies in blue-black, you've got goblins kind of in red-black.
That's the red-black deck.
So Mad Ante is uncommon again.
Yeah, Mad Ante's uncommon. Warren Weirding.
Green is actually probably the most interesting color on the surface.
Well, the varying things green does are very wide. Like...
That's what I'm saying. It's the most interesting on the surface.
Yeah.
But you've got like the faux dredge situation going on.
You've got dredge in green black. You've got tokens in green white. You've got storm in green red, which is interesting.
Do you think that's a thing?
No.
There's been talk on the internet that it's just a sham. It's just
a sham. Yeah.
I agree. It's a sham, especially when we knew cards were going to be banned surrounding it in the recent past. It was kind of like how many rituals that aren't legal and modern. Yeah, right.
There's no rituals.
So you just need to draft like mono desperate rituals in Manamorphose in the hope that you can make.
No, the idea is that you time your suspends. So you're like upkeep, search for giant dust wasp, Dirkwood boar, whatever the hell, and then like Grip Chapter 4. Oh man!
But those were things you could do in Time Spiral Limited, and they were fine. I mean, emptying the Warrens for 8 goblins in Time Spiral Limited was fine.
It's just like it feels weird that that's like all red green is like really set out to do. Green blue being arcane / ramp is kind of cool. My problem with that is, from what I could tell, there's no like spirit craft triggers.
You mean spirit?
Well, like there's
arcane spells,
and there's splicing,
splicing onto arcane.
But there's no like Teller of Tales, Sire of the Storms, Kami the Wild Hunt,
etc.
etc.
Not like any of those cards are specifically good.
Well, yeah, but like especially in that deck in that format, that was a good, like green-blue spirit triggers was a very good deck in Kamigawa block, which is like clearly what they're trying to recreate.
I don't think so. I think they're smarter than that. I think they're just giving you like
some cards.
No, they're giving you spells that interact favorably in limited that do cool stuff, and I think that's something that most limited sets don't have a lot of. I
think that it, especially if that's what they really wanted to push, it could have used another like 1 to 2 splice spells, like Kadama's Might, for instance.
There's the Strength of Cedars. Oh, you're talking about the tiny ones, the splice onto arcane ones.
Yeah,
you've got Hirobi's Whisper in the smaller set.
You've got Hirobi's Whisper, Torrent of Stone, Glacial Ray, all not green or blue.
Yeah, but it's not a green or blue thing. I think it's like a touch on blue thing. Like Reach Through Mist is like a big deal for like the storm decks, as well as the splice under arcane strategy.
It was like Sam Black's article where he broke down all 10 colors. And he's like, here's what we're doing in all the colors.
Combinations.
Yeah.
Color combinations.
I think it was either blue-green, it might have been blue-red was arcane.
I think in this particular set, because you also have Desperate Rituals. It's like, it's so nice that Desperate Ritual can not only power this non-existent storm deck, but it also be a bit of a player in the would-be, Glacial Ray, Dampened Thought decks.
The fact that Dampened Thought is common... Yeah, Sam started. My mistake. You're correct. Chat.
That makes more sense.
Yeah. It was Sam something. The fact that Dampened Thought is common, that is the real deal.
Yeah, to me, that's another reason that this set kind of mirrors a lot of cube environments, because you've got spell-based win conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as someone out there could be like, Storm is not a win condition in the set because it's so narrow and there isn't enough going on, it's very similar to cube, where it's too hard to get it going. But there are spell-based, non-creature / creature combat-based strategies that work.
Yeah. You could avoid interactivity if you really want to. I just think, the Dampened Thought deck in Kamigawa block was very good, especially in triple Kamigawa.
Yes.
But the fact that Dampened Thought was uncommon meant that, you kind of had to open it because people were aware of it, and they would either try and draft it themselves if they open it, or would hack it pretty often.
That was near the end of the lifespan of that, I felt like. And I think the thing with Modern Masters is, I don't think there's going to be a lot of opportunity to kind of overanalyze it for limited play, because
there's not enough of it.
Right, and the pool is smaller. The period of time in which people are going to be actively drafting it and writing articles and doing content about drafting it is going to be more narrow. So maybe those kind of things will slip through the crack a little bit longer, similar to how they happened in the Kamigawa days. Granted, that was the Wild West of Magic compared to what we have today, but there's a lot of room there.
Anybody else bummed that every color got 2 mythics, one of which was the dragons from Kamigawa?
Yes. No one's happy about that.
It just felt like...
The kids that are excited about that have not... The information has not kind of
trickled down yet?
Yeah, has not made its way down to that level yet.
I was just kind of oh, man. It's kind of a bummer, I felt.
So, we're skirting staying on topic here, which is Modern Masters, for all intents and purposes, is going to be the set that's going to be closest to a cube set for Magic players. Now, looking at the whole thing and looking at how it plays in limited environments versus how a cube plays for limited environment and what that can teach for cube builders, not so much there. Again, I think it's kind of it really feels like it's supercharged Lorwyn. We took the cards that were really good. You got your blind spot giants, your the thunderclap giants, your latchkey fairies, your
Staintrigger Daredevil.
Yeah, you have a lot of these really kind of cool tribal interactions, and you got Hillcomber Giant and things like that to kind of just really finish it out. But that's really where the filler is for that kind of set. You can really kind of tell where Wizards took the time to kind of to meld, put all the ingredients in, bake it up, and here's your set for limited. It's not the super power charge, all amazing cards all the time.
And I think that's kind of what people thought it was going to be.
Oh, definitely.
And I think that's why people were a little they're like, Kithkin Greatheart, what the hell?
And I think that, even Aaron Forsythe, really did a bad job of teasing it. Because, even in his conversations, oh yeah, we're, a year ago, it's oh yeah, we're testing it. It's fun to draft fairies and to draft Storm. And obviously, we as Magic players, we go to the other extreme being oh my god, we can do all these amazing things.
I think
you can't even remand your Grape Shot to get more Storm counters.
Because remand is
not in the set.
And then, there's weird, Auriac Salvagers being rare. That felt unnecessary.
That's definitely for limited play.
There's
definitely for limited play. At least they didn't put the whole cycle of spell bombs in. They're treating it like a cube.
Right.
They aren't putting in full cycles. They're just putting in the good cards.
Is it just Aether?
And Pirate.
And Pirate?
Yeah.
Okay. At least there's both. I originally had only seen Aether, and I was like, well, this is a waste.
Kind of a way to get all those Goblin tokens off the battlefield.
But yeah, the targets for Salvagers are pretty minimal in this set.
As your explosives.
Sure.
Whatever. Again, there's it's nice that there's a cross section. There's those kind of niche combos that we loved in previous limited sets.
I feel like blue-white is pretty weak. The mild artifact kind of Espery theme. I think.
Because there's Esper Zoa by itself, which is again
and Ethereum Sculptor and
it's kind of weak.
Sanctum Gargoyle,
yeah,
and that stuff. It felt of the stuff I looked at, it felt like it wasn't matching up nearly as well as some of the other color combinations.
I think the most important thing to take away from here is if you're going to go draft Modern Masters at your local store, whatever the case is going to be, the set is set up pretty well to kind of
Oh, black-white being rebels is also a shame.
Yeah.
And by shame, I mean...
There just aren't enough cards in the set.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why the cube is 700 cards. We can take 30 or 40 cards.
They should have just ran the Rebel Errata plan and just errated a bunch of black-white cards.
My point. That there's still plenty of depth in commons and uncommons, and the set almost feels like it's set up to just kind of have that built-in rare draft scenario where the cards are really powerful, so you're just going to take them on power level, and then you're going to, like, after the dust has settled and everyone has scooped up the rares, now it's going to be like, okay, well, in the last 12 or 11 cards in each of these packs, there's a real limited environment to have here.
Yeah.
Which is kind of why all the uncommons shifting down to commons really matters a lot.
I definitely think that the first pick out of, like, every Modern Masters pack is just going to be, like, pull the card in the back, say go. Like...
Maybe not all of them. I mean, there are some definite duds.
I mean, there are some duds, but, like...
And you gotta remember, every pack has a foil.
Right.
So, maybe every time you open a pack of Modern Masters at your local store for a draft,
like foil Hanakami.
You will be choosing between two cards, not just taking a card.
Yeah, like foil Dark Confidant Tarmogoyf.
But you can boil it down. It gets really awkward where it's like everyone has a tiny little like lotto ticket in front of them,
right? And
then they play a draft.
Everyone, like what I envision a lot of, especially for like the first time that they draft it, you're gonna like open your pack, and then you're gonna see like, especially if it's like a foil rare or God forbid a foil mythic, and then like another like something, one of the like $25+ cards, just immediately whipping the phone out,
right?
And, like going like looking like the prices.
Obviously, we challenge Reddit to the first guy to open Goyf foil Goyf.
Oh yeah, that's.
I mean, that guy probably just gets up and walks out of the building. To be honest,
yeah.
But it's
flip
possible.
The table, I'm out of here.
I mean, I'm not going to say I've ever seen that set of circumstances. I think the funniest scenario that I had that's close to that isn't about value, it's about playability and limited. I remember drafting Triple Mirrodin the first time around, and I opened a pack with Warhammer, foil Warhammer.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where...
Which one do you take?
And Vin and I, at the time, after the fact, we broke it down. We were like, okay, well, in the future, should this ever happen again, because I'm sure it will a lot, they're just uncommon, you always take the non-foil, because that way, whoever you pass it to, they know what you took. Does that make sense?
I mean, kind of.
Because, like, you know. I mean, not that it really matters.
Don't you want your opponent to... Don't you want your neighbor to not know what you're doing?
But if you take...
in the dark?
Maybe. Like, if you
take the foil, then like...
You take the foil Warhammer, and you pass a pack, and you're going to get the stink eye from the guy you just passed the pack to, which is like, what are you doing?
But, like...
Clearly... Like,
but then it's like, you just say, I took a foil. And you just like...
No, you don't say anything, actually. But...
I mean, Warhammer was very good, but I would not say the best card in that set for limited.
Triple Mirrodin?
I would say Grab the Reins is probably better.
Triple Mirrodin? Draft, not sealed.
Yeah. I mean, it's close. Grab the Reins was insane.
I mean, it was 7 mana double red, which was not
so
your big run of the mill.
And even you get 3 packs of mirrors.
Even if you had your Reins grabbed, your next mirror is a 4/1 trample lifelinker.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying like.
Either way, we've got multiple levels off topic.
Yeah.
My point is that yes, it's going to be funny when you hit foil.
At that point,
you just regular Goyf.
You just close that pack back up, go purchase another pack from the table, and then walk back over and open that.
Hello, kind sir. I'd like to purchase 1 pack of Modern Masters. Aren't you going to draft 1 pack?
I don't know what you. I only got 2. I only got 2 packs. So let's do a pack.
Yeah, let's go back to Cube, because that's why we're all here, obviously.
With new cards. Also exciting.
The Dragon's Maze update, which we have implemented for the Cube finally now that the league season is over, now has new cards, and thankfully this pack has new cards, and otherwise...
Well, we did change like 60 cards, so every pack's probably going to have a couple.
72, actually, so over 10% of the cards in the Cube have changed.
Yeah. Alright, so this pack, pick one, pack one. Conqueror's Pledge, Maelstrom Pulse, Fire Spout, Chainer's Edict, Goblin Guide, Far Away, Mangara of Karandor, Living Death, Crossing Grip, Pyrewild Shaman, Grasslands, Relic of Progenitus, Undead Gladiator, Cryptic Command, Crystal Shard.
Well, on the surface, this seems like the classic Goblin Guide or Cryptic Command fork in the road.
That is also kind of what I am looking at. And I personally either from experience or preference, would lean in the Goblin Guide direction.
I just really want to play Far and Away.
I mean, yes.
Well, as I am the blue mage by heart here, I have a hard time not taking a blue card. But it's funny because I really just want to take Far and Away.
I mean, I guess you don't take Crystal Shard because we took some of the lane destruction guys out, so...
There's still plenty of enters the battlefield triggers
Yeah.
creatures. That's not my point. It's just going hard into blue right here, I think is more aggressive of a move than taking a Goblin Guide. So as much as I'm the blue mage, I would take Goblin Guide over Cryptic Man in this scenario.
It's just, and it's not even necessarily a power level thing. It's just triple blue is a bold endeavor.
No, I'm completely agreeing with you. I think it's I think I'd be more inclined to take Living Death over Cryptic Command as well.
See, I would disagree with that.
Yeah, Living Death.
But you love Living Death a lot.
Yeah, I build decks around it all the time.
Yeah, I think Living Death is a fine card, but I think that it's well below Cryptic and Goblin Guide here. One of the nice things is like the thing about this pack that's weird is that like no matter which of the cards that we're talking about that you take, you're probably not getting anything worthwhile back. Like if you take Cryptic Command, you might get that Crystal Shard back. That's like going to be the best you can do.
You can get a Fire Spout back, maybe. You might get a Mangara back. Take that Crystal Shard, wheel that Mangara.
Oh, that is the bold choice.
That is the boldest move.
Yeah.
If I was going to play this safe, let's say we had something on the line.
If we were in the league proper,
I would probably just take Goblin Guide.
I think I would agree.
Any other draft outside of that, I'm taking that Far and Away.
Do something funner. Yeah. I enjoy the red deck. I think it's not only good, I enjoy playing it, I think it's fun. So, and Goblin Guide is the absolute best card in it by a mile. So,
bold words.
Not even debatable.
All right. To each their own.
That's my pick in this one is Goblin Guide, I think.
Okay.
So, yeah, and I mean, who knows? Maybe you get that Power Wild Shaman back.
You'll probably get that one back.
How was he today?
It was in 2 drafts. It was okay. I had it when my opponent had Withered Wretch, so that was a bit of a bust. And then the next time, it was pretty much just Spine Basher, and that was good. I mean, there was capacity to buy it back. Like, it could have gone further, but just being
Spine Basher
was just fine, yeah.
Alright, let's get some scenario picks. So for our first scenario here, the 4 cards that you have are Rolling Earthquake, Mind Twist, Shriekmaw, Scrubland. The pack that you are passed contains Ranger of Eos, Steam Vents, Yavimaya Elder, Troll Ascetic, Darksteel Ingot, Mishra's Factory, Wooded Foothills, Tin Street Hooligan, Braider Gargadon, Savannah Lions, Contagion Clasp. What are you taking? Why?
I think I'm going with the Ranger of Eos here.
Interesting.
Either that or Ingot.
Why did you initially think about Ranger here?
Card advantage.
Like, that's it?
My black-white land. I'm going to get that Savannah Lions back most likely out of this pack. And in the red, white, maybe black color combinations, you have the most tools with Ranger of Eos. Like, Ranger of Eos is surprisingly a Boros card in the cube. Because you can get Figure, Grim Lavamancer, Mother of Runes. Like,
oh, yeah.
It's just, it outclasses cards like Mana Elves.
Right.
And
like if you're in white green, Ranger of Eos is like an accelerant, a slow rolled accelerant. And if you're in white blue, it doesn't really do much other than
blue doesn't have a single blue 1-drop.
Yeah.
There's no Enclave Cryptologist. And there's still no
Flangman?
Well, Flangman's crazy muted brother,
Delver
Secrets.
Yeah.
Delver is like
on
the edge there.
The cards I like out of this pack, I agree with you about Darksteel Ingot. Just the fact that we have 2 X spells leads me to wanting some bigger mana, bigger acceleration. I also do kind of like Gargadon here. I know it's kind of a out there.
Well, it's just funny because it feels like you just kind of contradict what you're saying by saying like, oh, I have X spells, I want more mana. But now it's like Gargadon isn't always. I mean, you have to. I don't know. It seems super precarious just with this setup. Like with 2 X spells, I want to hit my land drops. I want to make sure they're in play, and make sure I can get these off at the size I want them to.
Yeah.
So to me, a card like Ranger can provide speed bumps because obviously cards like Mind Twist and Rolling Earthquake are very impactful when played on curve. And a card like Gargadon feels like it's kind of counterintuitive to any kind of plan that feels like it's going to be using powerful X spells.
I don't know. I mean, I think that Gargadon work like you're very looking. You could very easily angle this into being like a base red control deck, maybe with a little bit of black for like the Mind Twist or the Shriekmaw. And Rolling Earthquake being very, very powerful, like and kind of trying to go the big red route. A Greater Gargadon is fine there, especially like if you have like the wildfires, like he gets much, much better. That said, that deck also would want Darkstealing it. Like, I don't know. I think Darkstealing it is like a very unsexy pick here.
It's the safest play. I think that's where our kind of like pies intersect.
Yeah, it's the middle of the Venn diagram.
Yeah. Like I'm happy taking Ranger. I could be black-white with a Rolling Earthquake.
I just never want to be black-white, unless it's Mode Abyss, and Ranger Reveals doesn't work with either of those things.
Sure it does. Works with Abyss, and it kind of works with Mode. Not the best.
Get some Suntail Hawks.
All right, so we'll just take Mana Rock here.
All right, let's do another one. This is way sweeter. All right, so we've got 4 cards once again. Time Walk, Ancestral Visions, Forbid, Master of the Wild Hunt. The pack we are past is Revelark, Bone Shredder, Reanimate, Olivia Voldaren, River Boa, Dromar's Charm, Looter Ilkor, Gale Powder Mage, Slayer's Stronghold, Basalt Monolith, Pulse of the Fields.
Feels like it's got to be a blue or green card here.
Really? Looter Ilkor or River Boa?
It's like that or Basalt Monolith. Like I don't want to take as much as like I love Revelark.
I was gonna say, like, how do you not of all people not take Revelark here?
Because two of its really good cards that interact with it are also in the same pack, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna get the other of them back. Master of the Wild Hunt is a very strong card. Like if I had to go 3 blue cards into a green card, that's like almost the exact green card I would want.
Right, green removal.
Yeah.
I mean, that's certainly true, but at the same time, like, I have no problem ditching that Master of the Wild Hunt for Revelark. Or conversely, still taking green cards and blue cards and splashing that Revelark.
That can be done. That can be done.
I'm not, like, the way this deck already looks, like, I would maybe play Looter Ilkor, and I would probably be not happy if I'm playing River Boa. Just on pure power level based on what we already have. Like
3 very powerful blue cards.
3 super powerful blue cards and a super powerful green card. And then, like, 2 ones, like 2 mana, like, dorks are not really, like, what it already looks like we're trying to do.
I don't know. A regenerating 2-power guy in green for 2 mana is very good for what we have in our hands. And Looter Ilkor, in a similar vein, is other 2-drop that can kind of get us to these very powerful spells.
I mean, I think if I was taking...
like both those cards. Like
if I was taking a 2-drop, I would take Looter over River Boa.
Okay. I can get behind that.
But I still think that, like... So, like, Looter Ilkor or River Boa are, like, kind of middle-of-the-road picks. And Revelark is a higher-risk pick, where, like, it might not work out, we might not play it, or whatever. That said, we're not giving up a whole lot to take Revelark.
We wouldn't be giving... Similarly, we wouldn't be giving up a whole lot to take Bone Shredder.
Yeah, but I'd rather have Revelark than Bone Shredder.
Okay.
Like, Revelark is just so good and so fun.
Again, on fun factor, obviously Revelark.
Yeah.
On winning my matches, I don't know if that's Looter, or just Revelark, or even Bone Shredder.
Chat wants to know, what about Reanimate?
Combos with our Forbid.
Yeah.
But Revelark also combos with our Forbid. I would take Bone Shredder over Reanimate in this pack all day long, just because, again, if you're looking at the blue cards, we've got the capacity to try to get to a soft lock with Forbid, and we also have, the Suspend and Ancestral Recall, so we want to make sure that we can get that card advantage. We have to live long enough to do it. So Bone Shredder is almost the most obvious card to be able to do that, but I would not take the black over the Power of Revelark and the white. And again, by talking about the other picks, just what I want to avoid is dying before I get to do the cool stuff that I can do with this deck. Because I know I'm going to have very powerful late game, and be able to lock it up. And that's why, to me, it's like I'm willing to talk about cards like Riverboa, because it's like I could just fill in the early game with efficient creatures.
Yeah. I mean, I think like the best card we could see, it would be like a Wall of Roots kind of thing. Like Wall of Roots, like this is like the perfect deck for Wall of Roots. Like being a speed bump and an accelerant is exactly what this deck kind of wants.
These are good decks for Mana Wars. These are good decks for remands. All those kind of like
tempo.
Drag the situation out until you eventually cast like Sphinx of Isle or whatever.
Preferably Consecrated.
Really? I just want to lay the Shroud Man. I mean, I guess with Consecrated Sphinx you have a better Forbid lock, but
that is a hell of a lock.
I'm not picky. So end of the day. You're taking Revelark?
I think I'm taking Revelark. I think I'm going to roll the dice on that one.
Okay. I'm just going to take Looter because my blue cards are so powerful I don't really want to deviate.
Understandable. I think that Looter is a fine pick, and I don't think anyone would really argue. You're very clearly playing blue, and you'd probably play Looter.
We never stopped on Basalt Monolith, though. I thought that was going to be like a second pick for both of us. But
Basalt Monolith is just... Excuse me. Every time I have it, I'm more and more underwhelmed with it.
Huh.
Like,
Basalt Monolith seems so clean.
It is no Grim Monolith.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, I'd rather have Thrawn Dynamo.
Because?
Being able to use the mana repeatedly is quite important.
I don't know, you can use the mana repeatedly with Basalt Monolith, you just have to...
Take turns off?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I think I still would evaluate Basalt Monolith as more impactful than Thrawn Dynamo. In most decks. Non-Masticore decks.
Sure. I don't know, I'm just kind of... It's just been, like, so clunky and awkward a number of times, especially, like, trying to untap it. I'm just haven't been thrilled with it.
And I think all the times where I've had Basalt Monolith and couldn't untap it when I desperately needed it, the other cards that seem better would have left me in the same spot, like a Mana Vault or a Grim Monolith, and I probably needed to do something early in the game, that's why I needed to tap it, where Thrawn Dynamo probably would have been too slow.
What about, like, Warren Powerstone?
Did we just cut that card? I think we just cut that card.
That
one's really awkward.
I disagree. Oh, Reginald, I disagree.
Going from... So on turn 4 you go to 7 mana with Basalt Monolith, versus on turn 4 you go to 6 mana.
Like, it was funny, we were actually talking about this on the way over. Like, because I had Elish Norn in the draft tonight, and we were talking to Carl, like, is Elish Norn the best 7 in Cube?
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about it, and, like, 7 is not a really relevant mana cost. Because there's just not very much of it.
Right.
Like, compared to, like, I'm used to the discussion of what's the best 6. Because there are so many bombed 6s. So, like, getting to 6 feels much more important than getting to 7 for the vast majority of decks.
I completely agree, which to me makes it sound like Basalt Monolith is clearly superior to Thrawn Dynamo.
Okay, but Warren Powerstone... I thought we were comparing Warren Powerstone...
Oh, no, I thought we were still talking about the initial conversation of...
No.
You would rather have a Thrawn Dynamo over a Basalt Monolith.
You were saying, like, going from, like, 7 mana on turn 4 versus 6 mana on turn 4. I'm saying the difference between 6 and 7 mana is not huge in Q because the 6s are already so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, Warren Powerstone effectively gets you to where you want to be at the same time, but does not have the drawback that Basalt Monolith does. If that makes sense.
Kind of, but it's what we're both agreeing on is that 6 is so impactful in the game of Magic.
Yes,
that
especially in Q.
That it's all about getting there. It's not about how we got there. It's about what speed we got there, and both those cards are at the same speed.
Sure.
So to me, at this point, it feels like we're comparing Warren Power Stone to Basalt Monolith, and that's pretty, like, hair-splitting, and I'd rather just, like, 3 makes 3. Like, you're pretty much using it at the same term. You're just getting more mana out of it, you're doing something more powerful.
Right, but I mean, like, the reason I brought up Warren Power Stone is because we just cut it.
It's true.
So, like, really then the discussion becomes, like, Thran Dynamo versus Warren Power Stone.
Okay, and then I can defend Thran Dynamo here by saying that it's about diversity.
Right.
So, like, I think if we cut Thran Dynamo and added Warren Power Stone, we would just be trying to mimic as many Grim monoliths as possible, where diversifying the fast color or the accelerant colorless mana in the cube.
At the same time, though, to again reference the conversation we were having earlier about the new M14 Landwar Elf, right? And I posed the question: how many times do they have to exactly reprint Landwar Elf before you do not include it in the cube? And the number you quoted was 11.
11, yeah.
So, you know, you want to talk about diversity,
okay,
and we're going to play 11 Landwar Elves.
But this will bleed into color philosophy versus cube philosophy.
Sure.
So the color philosophy of green is much more about acceleration versus the feeling of colorless and artifacts shouldn't always be how quickly and how largely can we cheat the scale. Because that's going to lead to less fun games. Okay. So in Powered Cube, you still want to be able to have those very powerful effects. You just don't want to make so much disparity that it's like all games come down to I got to Titan on turn 3 or 4,
right?
While you played some red creatures.
The chat wants to know how you came up with 11 Landwar Elves.
There's like what 60 creatures in 60-something creatures in green in the green section. And I think we currently have like 7 or 8 Landwar Elves right now.
I'll pull the list.
I think you could bump it up probably another like 10 or 15% before you like felt like you just had too many of them. I think like once in a blue moon you draft the deck where you have like 5 mana elves. I think 5's the most you could just really ever hope to get realistically.
So 1.
You already missed one.
Oh, 1, 2, 3.
Now, everyone listening and watching is just hearing us count and hold up fingers.
4.
Did you miss another one?
No.
Eck
This is a high quality show we're putting on tonight.
Kind of out of nowhere, I decided this would be what would happen. So there's 7. Or
7 pure.
Close off the top of my
7
head.
pure.
There were not 8, there were 7. What are they for everyone at home? We've got Arbor Elf, Avacyn's Pilgrim,
Birds of Paradise,
Elves of Deep Shadow, Findhorn Elves,
Landwar
Elves.
Where were they? Where'd they go?
Noble Hierarch. That's it. Now you have close relatives, like you have Jiraga Treespeaker.
Right, you have Jiraga Treespeaker, Werebear, Wall of Roots, like...
Yeah, but the point is, like, actual elves. Plus, you know, elves get better. More elves make more equipment better, of all varieties. I mean, obviously, Skullclamp is obvious.
I think if there was one... I know we don't really have, like, a tribal cube thing going. Okay. I think if there was one tribe to support, it would be elves. As opposed to, like, goblins or something like that. Like,
so if we ever crested, like, 11 Landwar Elves, maybe scale it back to 10, add in Archdruid?
I'm already kind of a fan of Archdruid. Like, maybe over somebody else? Like, this guy, maybe? Although that's...
Jade Mage, that's just a combo.
Yeah. Anyway.
My ideal pizza? That would probably be... like a garlic cream sauce. No, maybe a pesto sauce. I gotta start with sauce.
I think we're being trolled by the chat because we're not talking about anything relevant. Anyway.
You're relevant to say this is irrelevant. These are all little conversations, arguments that Eck and I will have kind of over the course of, you know, when we come up with changes. Probably a pesto sauce, as long as there's a good creamy pesto sauce. Because, like, a garlic cream sauce could just be, like, too thick or too, like...
We've just gone... This is a...
Evening, Kenny.
This is one for the ages.
We've run out of things to talk about, so we're talking about our favorite pizzas currently. And for the podcast audience, I completely apologize. This is what happens when we start.
Let's talk about green, because that's what we wanted to talk about. Speaking of pesto, That'll segue into green perfectly.
If you hadn't said the word, it would have been very nice. So we've kind of ridden the wave of spoiler season as of late. Gosh, it feels like we did Gate Crash yesterday. I mean, we've done Dragon's Maze. We've talked about Modern Masters and how that kind of can have implications.
We get like 2 weeks off, and then it's right back into
M14. And we've already covered half of M14 during that time span.
Yeah.
So we started to go into the series. We started to break down the sections of the cube that we play with. We talked about lands. We've talked about artifacts. We've talked about multicolor cards. This week, we're coming back to that series. We're going to talk about green and its role in cube. The history of how green has kind of evolved in cube. Because it's a lot different today than it was 4 or 5 years ago when we started cubing. Are you just reading random...
Sorry.
random gatherer cards at this point?
I do that sometimes.
So, where do you want to start with green?
I think let's talk originally. Green had kind of long been considered the weakest color in cube. Before black kind of took that mantle over.
Kenny's getting a little bit ahead of us over there in the chat. Green aggro boo, yes, we agree.
And that's really where it started.
Green, I think a really good
early green sections in cubes, ours included. A lot of Gazban Ogre, a lot of Jungle Lion, a lot of Tattermunch Maniac,
Pouncing Jaguar, and I think my favorite, kind of encompassed green and aggro, was like Albino Troll.
Yeah,
it was look, everybody, there's green aggro.
We're really trying to push like red-green beats, green 2-power guys for 1.
Kurt Ape and friends.
Yeah. So the problem with it was that greens, of all the colors that get 2-power guys for 1 mana, greens were the worst in general.
It wasn't even so much that they were the worst creatures as much as the other colors started to kind of catch up in the diversity of the things they can do and the power level of the things they can do.
Right. That was the other problem with green initially, too, is that it only really did one thing.
Yeah. So when Cube started, blue and black were very much the control colors, and you could kind of just, in a small way, it felt like Cube was kind of mimicking the history of Magic, where blue didn't play creatures, it just played control elements. Black didn't really play creatures. Well, it played some, but not as much. Hypnotic Spectre or Big Win Conditions. And it also was very controlling of pay of its life. White was kind of doing spells-y kind of related things. Or,
it was casting Wrath of God like every turn.
Or it would be Crusade and Friends.
Yeah.
So it was coming at things from a different angle. And red was like burn spells, LD, big X spells, a lot of fireballs. So green kind of had the creature market cornered, almost.
Right, but the problem was most of the creatures, like Jungle Lion, for instance, even back then, this is a very poor man's Savannah Lion. Or
Yeah,
other...
I mean, there's a lot... Nowadays in Cube, there's a lot more blocking with 2/1s when there ever used to be, and that's an evolution of creature combat, the number of creatures that are played in Cube, all these kind of things. And again, you got to remember that in our cube, and in a lot of cubes, I mean, this is kind of pretty recognized philosophy, but again, it's cubes, so there's nothing gospel about it. Green is the color with 2/3 creatures to 1/3 spells,
as opposed to blue being 2/3 spells, 1/3.
That's the counterpart there.
Right.
Cracking fetch lands and playing Wild Dog.
The other big problem with green, and this was kind of just brought up in chat, is that besides creatures, what green was doing was not very good. Like, for instance, other color, black had some guys as well as removal and discard. White had some guys as well as mass removal or Armageddon, whatever. Red had some dudes and some burn. Green had some dudes and pump spells, which just historically are not going to be as good as other things you could be doing.
And then damage stopped stacking.
Right, and then they changed damage stacking in the middle of this.
So Giant Growth stopped being Healing Solve as well, where it was for a while, so it kind of helped make up for some of these problems. So, a kind of current, general philosophy for green in cubes is you don't want to just kind of make that creature aggro. If red and white are kind of filling that space, and even black sometimes nowadays, as people try to adjust that color over, we don't want to be fighting for who has the best 2-power guy for 1, or even who has the best 3-power guy for 2. I mean, we talked about the new Colothothian Beast or whatever that's coming out.
Oh, the 3/3 for green.
Yeah, double green for just a 3/3. End of sentence. And we'd even played Garrick's Companion for a while back in the day because the trample was relevant, giving equipment and that kind of thing. But we've even shied away from those kind of things. If you're a green 2-drop, you're pretty rare, and you got to do something really different. You got to be Wild Mongrel to both attack and enable the graveyard. You've got to be River Boa to have evasion and regenerate. You've got to be Strength Root Geist to have haste and undying. It's not necessarily about, we make the biggest guy possible and that's how we win the game. It's about making sure we diversify in the kind of threats and the things that we do. Yeah, all the way back. There's some awkward ones.
Yeah. Vine Dryad.
Yeah, there were times, I remember people trying to play Rogue Elephants and Harvester Worms and all that kind of stuff. And now, now we've kind of come to an amalgamation. So, bringing it forward to today, with all these other creatures all these other colors trying to occupy that space with the aggressive creatures. White comes at it from a particular angle that's still unique, and they do something, and they have other tools. Red is obviously the burn color that's the cheap creatures kind of partner up with it very organically. And then black is almost the color with the tribal theme, and the 1 and 2 drops interplay with that really well. There's more synergies in that color. Green doesn't have any of that. I mean, the elves tap for mana. They don't go big. And so we've kind of embraced that. And that's why we're so willing to add more Llanowar Elves type creatures. And Cube and Cube and Green have interacted in a way where it's mostly those Llanowar Elf type creatures. We're trying to jump the scale. We're trying to leave 2 out. We're going to go from 1 to 3 as many games as we can.
And I mean, ideally, even leave 3 out and try and just jump as my thing about
it's hard to leave 3 out.
Well, I know, but I mean, my thing about Green, it's 2, especially it's 2, and we talked about this a little bit in the Dragon Maze spoilers when we were talking about Renegade Crassus, the 3/2 evolve guy, and he came up as a legitimate point of discussion because Green's 3 drops. There's some that are aggressive, and there are some that are value guys. You either fall in the Eternal Witness Yavimaya Elder camp, or you fall in the Leatherback Baloth camp, so to speak. And there's not a lot in the middle, and neither camp is deep enough to only have that represented in your cube.
And you wouldn't want to just have that. You want to diversify. You want to play.
But you end up with a lot of times, I'm an aggressive green deck and I'm playing Yavimaya Elder, and that's not very good. Or I'm a controlling deck that plays green, and now I have this random beater because I didn't have anything else on the curve. So having the ability to skip the early drops as much as possible to get in, because green, the real meat of green is at 4 and 5.
Not even so much 5. It's 4, 6, and green is easily the color that has the most past 6.
Well,
for its own color.
Sure, but I mean,
I think 5 is still kind of a tricky mana cost for green.
I don't know.
It's a little more diverse than it used to be.
Strange Tournament, Wolfear, Silverheart.
But then you've got your plans are Plow Under Acidic Slime.
Oh, the spell side? Sure.
Well, no, Acidic Slime's a guy.
Acidic Slime, yeah.
Stomp Howler, things like that. Yeah, I mean, we kind of want to just skip 2 drops in terms of creatures for green. Oh, yeah, you have Thragtusk, yeah, you have diversity there.
And Thragtusk is also excellent. The problem with Thragtusk, and that has been the problem with Thragtusk for a long time, or that other people have noticed, the fact that it only costs a single green.
Oh, right. So the green mage rarely gets the Thragtusk.
Right. Everybody else takes the Thragtusk and splashes the Thragtusk.
Yeah.
If Thragtusk costs Garruk Primal Hunter mana, then it would be a very different conversation.
Green would be better in cube.
Exactly. No joke. If this cost 2 green would be better in cube, just because it would always get this card.
Yeah, the blue mages would be staying away from your Thragtusks.
Yeah, because right now it's I'm playing blue-red, nah, I'll find a tropical island.
Either I don't want to play against this Thragtusk, or it'll make it into my deck.
Yeah, so, and I mean, that you see that in Constructed, now. Decks since they printed this card, have just been randomly splashing it because it's that good, and it just hoses so many decks. So, green really, the more cards that are, especially because of the Llanowar Elves, Jiraga Tree Speaker, or Wall of Roots, all this stuff that produces just green mana, as opposed to like tapping for any color like Birds of Paradise, is the more stuff that you can have that's like green, the more green mana symbols you can get. Like, it almost makes green better. Because fewer of its cards get stolen by other colors. As long as the cards are themselves decent.
Green is still, of all the colors in Magic, in Cube, I still think the most narrow. I think it has to do one of only a very few things. And obviously Beatdown is the one that feels like it's built in already, and then Ramp is probably the next thing you kind of go to from there.
The thing I feel like as the Green Mage is like, if you kind of take green at its face value and you put in the quote unquote best cards for green in terms of just pure power level, you end up as the mid range deck. Like, you beat the aggro decks and lose to control. Like, pretty often, you smash the crap out of little red men, but you can't beat counter spells.
I mean, if your cube has the full complement of Wall of Roots and Wall of Mulches and all that kind of stuff, and Wall of Blossoms, etc., etc., I think that in our cube,
you really have to jump through hoops to get out of that position, though. To go in a different direction with green, because it's so easy to fall into that. Well, all the good green cards cost 4 mana or 5 mana or whatever.
I have not tried the card mulch in Cube, although I really want Grizzly Salvage in there. I think that it would take quite a bit of reworking of the Cube to get a card like mulch to work. I think you could get it to work, but at that point, it's pretty much a green-black card.
You'd have to really rework.
I mean, it could be cool. It could be fun. Like, we're talking about making cards like Oath of Ghouls
if we were to
more active.
If we were to try and redesign Cube, we opened the show talking about the Modern Masters color pairs.
Okay.
If we were to try and redesign Cube, maybe not necessarily
based on 2 color pairings,
right? So rather than just kind of, you've got monocolor cards, you've got multicolor cards, whatever. Okay, what do we want exactly green-black to do? What do we want exactly red-blue to do? What do we want exactly blue-white to do?
We kind of covered that.
So
it wasn't what we wanted them to do. It's
right. So I'm saying, if we started from scratch and said, if we're going to make green-black the dredge, discard, work with your graveyard, recurring nightmare, survival of the fittest deck, Grizzly Savage is for sure in there, and along with Volteth Troll and Varls and stuff like that.
I think that kind of that comes more from the perspective of, I'm going to build archetypes for a cube, and then I'm going to put cards in based on those archetypes, versus the world we kind of work in is slightly different, where it's we want to play with the most powerful cards in Magic. We like the history of it. We like the power of it. How do we kind of sculpt this so that it plays like a set?
Yeah.
Cards like Mulch, you almost go the opposite direction.
I think it really just depends on, at Cube as a design philosophy, are you looking to try and make, an environment that is as close to being a real set release limited environment as possible, or are you looking to jam the most exciting, powerful, awesome cards and environment you can while still making it fair? I think it just totally is just different.
Well, to me, what it comes down to is, I'm always trying to think of that person who walks up to Cube for the first time and what their expectations are, and what, when they sit down and pick up cards, it should be a little intuitive. They should kind of get it. It's these cards are really powerful. It's not oh, how do I evaluate this mulch? How do I evaluate this?
And that happens a lot, I find, when I draft other people's cubes. And that's not a knock on anyone particularly, but
no.
When you have more stuff in your cube, either they're personal favorites, or you like them, or you've got this theme, or whatever, if you only see the one in your pack, you have no clue, especially if you haven't seen a list, you have no clue how deep this is, if this is just a weird outlier, is this a theme, is this...
I think that, we have definitely had those kind of encounters where we're playing with somebody's cube, we see a card that we like, we take it assuming there's support for it, oh, this must be a thing, however narrow that card is. At the end of the draft, you're oh, it just didn't come together, you ask whoever's cube, and it's oh, well, those particular cards you just mentioned actually aren't even in there. Well, but I took this Academy Rector, or I took this...
Yeah.
Like, I tried to go down this path thinking, like, well, if this card's here, these other cards must be here. And that could be really difficult.
Yeah, I think if you design your cube with cards that force players to make assumptions and don't follow through on them, you're going to have problems.
In the long run, you'll probably have some more frustrated people, and that's why with our cube we kind of go big just to kind of solve it. It's like you could just take powerful cards, you could try to figure out mana curve and color combinations as you go, and you're going to end up with a lot of fun cards. In Magic, you'll end up with a deck. You could see a Seismic Assault in the draft, and it might click in your head and be like, oh, I remember this from 8th edition Limited. Like if I draft red decks, all my swamps all my mountains are now shocks. Those are good. I'm going to take this card. And then you see the swans. You're like, oh my gosh, there's stuff I can do here. Like light bulbs start to go off, and that's just really fun in the draft process. Where it's like you don't put something in so narrow. It's like you don't see solitary confinement and be like, is this just a fog or is this like a battle plan? Like what is this?
So I think it's important. Like the more, if you're going to include narrow cards in your cube in any color, you really have to have at least some baseline support for them.
Yeah. Otherwise, in the long run, you're just gonna end up with a confused player base or just some negative experience, and that kind of bleeds back and forth with the conversation about design philosophy in general or the color of green. I mean, something that you see postings about on Reddit all the time, or I get asked questions about is, look at my cube, tell me what's up with my cube, what do you think I should change, what should I add, where should I go? Those are some of the hardest questions to ever answer, because it's like, oh, well, you take some time, you're like, I would add these 10 cards, and I would, question these 5 cards, and I don't know if you want to do this, and then it's like, well, I can't afford that, or I just don't want to do that.
Right, there are so many extraneous, extenuating circumstances when it comes to people's cubes, because it's like, oh, well, I don't own these, or my playgroup doesn't
I've only
like
been
these.
playing Magic since Shards of Alara.
Right.
So my cube is just Shards of Alara. But you didn't say that until after I looked at it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you kind of just missing some old stuff.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Yeah,
I mean, that tends to be more. I find, especially for newer players or the lists I look at, I've been playing for 3 or 4 years, whatever. The cards they miss are usually the awesome limited cards from sets gone by.
During that time period?
Yeah,
It's like if you had a cube that
if you started playing in, say, Scars of Miriam, for instance.
Okay.
You're not going to remember or know, some of the sweet, combat tricks that were in Onslaught Block that you could potentially add to cube. Or something like that.
I'm coming from the perspective where I've only played Magic since Scars of Mirrodin, so I'm going to build a cube from there forward.
Right. But, even if you're willing to have older cards, you know what I mean? Even if you've played Magic for 3 or 4 years, you still know, Time Walk's very good, or Moxen, if you had access to them or whatever. But, you might not know about, some of the kind of the sweet tricks that are in the more middling area of power level.
Now I'm just thinking about if we were to take a particular set or particular whatever and just make a cube from there forward, what it would look like. So this kind of series, this kind of color breakdown or section breakdown, for me it helps, not only is it a bit of a catharsis for us to be able to go through what we're doing, but also kind of just bring out general philosophies and views that we have about cube and cube construction, and hopefully that kind of stuff can apply to all these scenarios where people ask us, hey, what do I mean, every time someone asks, hey, what can I do with this cube? I'm always I want to answer. I just don't have any idea.
Well, it's kind of
any of these things that come up.
Some questions are. I feel especially on the cube Reddit, and try and look at stuff or think about answering questions or whatever. The more specific someone is, the better it works.
Oh, obviously, if you've got it down to a pinhole and you're looking for something to put in that spot,
right? I need what 5 drops in red do you play?
I need green pump spells that cost 2 or less mana.
Right. I need what counter spells. Blah blah blah.
What has worked for you and what hasn't in that scenario? Yeah. Is Sylvan Might good enough?
What does your blue-red section look like? What equipment do you play? If it's look at my entire 400 card cube and tell me what you think, it's just impossible. Because it's every card should ideally depend on the other cards.
To be honest, really what I think is you're 300 cards off from my cube, and that's what I would want to play every day.
Yeah.
When someone actually says that to you, I mean, that's really the first thing that goes through my head. It's like, what do you think? It's like, well, I probably had all these cards you don't have, and I probably cut some of these other cards.
I take out those cards and I put these in.
I'd put these in, and then it would look similar to this, and this is what we have the most fun with playing with every day.
Yeah. It's so much of a preference thing.
Yeah, and that's why it's awkward when people... you get it. You get it. I don't want to harp on this too much. I want to get back to green. Skip twos. If it's a 2-drop in your green section, it's got to be real good. It's got to be Raphaelos good. It's got to be...
Riverboa good?
Diverse. Riverboa diverse.
Riverboa diverse.
It just can't be a generic 3/3.
Yeah.
We skip 2 as much as we can. 3 has got to be really impactful too. 3 has got to be Eternal Witness, Yavimay Elder, Surprise, Wolfear Avenger. It's got to do something. Troll Ascetic will then. Troll Shroud.
I
Obviously
really
strong.
want like a 4/4 for 3 in green. That's not Leatherback Bailoff.
Or Loxodon Smiter. Or...
That's not. I mean, like just green.
It will get there eventually.
I know. It's just weird that like that isn't a thing.
It's not even like a 4/3 that's just green.
Maybe.
Yeah, look it up later. So we jump from 1. We try to get to 4 as fast as we can. When we get to 4, for us, we get Nostalgia and Ernem Jin. Now it's not the best card. We understand that. That is a little nostalgia for us.
That being said, though, it has a bit of a bonus thing where it works with Wildfire.
Right, which actually is one of its saving graces for why it gets to continue to hang around the cube. It's not just...
Apologies for everyone.
That's okay. That's okay. So we go from 1, we try to get to 4. This is the most vanilla of the guys we have there. At one point in time, we played Jade Leech.
Jade Leech was in for a while.
I'm pretty sure at this point I have played every
card that lives through Wildfire has had its turn in the cube.
Jade Leech actually lasted the cube.
This is
a lot longer than it should have.
This is a mild non sequitur, but especially referring to Wildfire, like we were looking for a long time about 5 toughness guys that cost 5 or less in red that like live through Wildfire, and we went real deep on trying to find. I mean,
we went all the way.
I remember like not entirely jokingly suggesting Goblin Machinist.
Oh yeah, you were pretty serious about that for a while.
Because that guy lives through Wildfire, and he is a win condition. So, you know.
So, here's an incentive to play red-green is really what we're getting at. You don't have to play cards like Goblin Machinist. I'm sure you don't know what that does if you're listening to this after the fact. Don't bother looking it up. It doesn't matter.
Sapling Burst is also a kind of an old school green card that's kind of fallen by the wayside.
4 or 5 years ago in Cube.
I think the problem with
Fires and Bursts.
I think the problem with Sapling Burst is kind of the problem with a lot of other cards from that era, which is that they just haven't kept up on power level.
Yeah, I mean, Sapling Burst is in this odd middle ground where we've even kind of lost more of the haste effects. Like, we just lost Lightning Greaves.
There's no fires if you have a mana.
Right.
There's no Urabrask anymore.
No, not Urabrask anymore.
There's not even Lightning Greaves or something like that.
No. I mean, like, Sapling Burst can come back. It's definitely one of those cards that's a unique effect you're not going to see again on a Magic card. So, if you have it, hold on to it for your cube. If you run it, I don't fault you, but I don't think it's like overly powerful in this moment.
It's just the impact it has on the board used to be so much better than like most creatures.
Well, yeah, you could like what's the math? Like 18 them with haste or something, or just kill them
but
as one card.
As creatures get better and better and better, you know, making that like that effect gets worse and worse and worse in retrospect. Because it just like falls behind the power curve more and more.
Yeah, it's diverse enough. I think it does stuff. So, you got Ernem Jin. I mean, out of the most recent set, you got a great card like Deadbridge Goliath. I think Deadbridge Goliath is...
he's been very good.
A huge card, and it functions just the way it was meant to in design. And we have Wildfire. So, you're getting a guy that you could power out early with your Mana Elf to make a big 5/5.
And he makes your Mana Elves better in the late game.
Which is exactly what it was meant to do.
Yeah. I really like that guy.
So look for that kind of stuff in your 4-drops. Also the 4-drops in green... Master of the Wild Hunt, you've got, what was it, Diversity. Master of the Wild Hunt, Oz and Bailoff are really huge.
Master of the Wild Hunt, I think, is really important. I do not think that if your cube is capable of playing Master of the Wild Hunt, that is to say it's not Pauper or Peasant or whatever, you should be playing it because it's one of the most... Like, I never had a green deck that did not want it if it didn't have it. Because it's so hard to get removal in green.
It does everything.
As well as the source of card advantage.
Those guys have 2 power.
Master Wildhunter is just very, very good all the time.
So, going from 4 up to like 5 and 6, it's a little more elementary with kind of figuring out the kind of stuff you want. I mean, you probably at home right now or in the car, wherever you're listening to this, you could probably name the 5 drops in green that are good in cube. They're not hard to figure out. With 6 drops, it also feels like it's pretty elementary in that there aren't that many. I think that, If Biff of Freet, we used to play that guy a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He goes very much under the radar because people think he's like not a magic card because his artwork was the one that was used on Cyrandib and Revised and people confuse it all the time. This is one that...
Flying Hill Giant in green.
Yes. Phantom Monster is what we're referring to. So we have a Phantom Monster that anyone can hurricane at any time.
Mm-hmm.
You just pay a green, it deals 1 to each player and each creature with flying. So it's fair and balanced because your opponent could kill this. But at the same time, it's kind of like a 5/3 because you can, every turn...
You just shoot him.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Juggernaut of the air for that era. So if Biff of Freet, he gets a card that can come back in our cube. So...
I think that... Again, I don't feel like right now green needs more 4s. Green has a lot of high power 4s. Like, I'm looking for 3s and 6s right now. That's kind of my current project for green, is to try and find 3s and 6s.
Well, we can talk about 6s, in that there are, none?
Legit none?
I don't know, go back to the list.
Let's see. Nope, that's an 8. That's a 7. That's a 5.
It's a house. It's a bee!
I love that joke. Make two tokens of Jade Mage, I suppose. Palaka Worms is 7.
I'd like to say we did a lot of research before we sat down to do this, but in reality, it's mild winging it.
Yeah.
So, and the comment in the chat beat me to it, but that was going to be the next line here.
Prime time.
Primeval Titan is like the go-to, should it be in the cube, should not be in the cube. Does it get better, does it get worse? Rampaging Baloths also isn't bad.
I like Rampaging Baloths more than I like Primeval Titan. And the reason why, and I've had this conversation with a number of people over time, is that Primeval Titan's effect is very powerful when you can for sure get powerful lands that will grant you some form of card advantage, whereas in Cube, a lot of times you have maybe 1. And the rest of the time he's just getting basics. Or just like dual lands.
And he's gotten better for us over time as we've slowly added the Wolf Run, the Township.
Sylvos is also
Sylvos we played for a long time.
He was in forever and ever and ever.
Triple green.
Yeah.
It's kind of why I got left on the sideline.
Better than... I mean, no one's going to hack it. Better than 5 in a green.
Yes, Mold Shambler and Brutalizer Exarch. I played Brutalizer Exarch when...
For a day?
Yeah, when
that came out and that one went in and they were like,
no good. Mold Shambler, I think we might have played for 5 seconds too at one point.
He was in for a little while. He lasted longer than he should have because he could destroy lands.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Brutalizer Exarch can destroy lands too.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway. That 6 mana spot for green's really rough. Primeval Titan is obviously the go-to card that people talk about. I think Sylvos is probably your best bet, or Rampaging Baloths.
I think Rampaging Baloths is. I would try this over Primeval Titan. If you have a cube with Primeval Titan in it, I would try swapping it for Rampaging Baloths.
Because
well, they're both 6/6 tramples for 6. So you're getting effectively the same guy. You're trading the ability to get lands out of your deck, which at the point at which you have 6 mana is probably not super relevant unless you have very exciting lands to go get, which I doubt you do, for the ability to make 4/4s, with your lands and your... Like, all of a sudden now you're... So the thing about Primeval Titan is a lot of green spells are ramp spells. Rampant Growth, Kodama's Reach, Farseek, etc. And once you have Primeval Titan, all those spells become effectively worthless because you're already ramping so hard you do not need them. Whereas with Rampaging Baloths, all of a sudden now your ramp spells turn into creature generators. So you turn those cards back on in the late game. Whereas...
This is all well and good. I think the one fallacy with it is that Rampaging Baloth is just another... It's another Aetherling. I mean, really, it's a 7-mana card. Because when you play it on 6, when you just like ramp into it on 6, you're effectively getting less than you're getting with Primeval Titan. Like, this card lands, and the Black Mage is like, okay, that was fun, kill it. Meanwhile, with Primeval Titan, you're like, okay, we'll go search up my things that do stuff.
Stomping ground.
You don't know. I mean, again, like if you're playing Primeval Titan, you think that you have a reason to play it. Maybe it's the same then. Maybe getting 2 lands out of your deck is the same expected value as the potential to make a lot of 4/4s. Either way, here's the thing about green and the cube. We want to accelerate, and the big guys are really where it's at. We don't feel like we're missing out on a whole lot in terms of 6 drops, because what we get back and everything it costs 7 or more.
Halaka Worm.
And that's what there's
one of my favorites.
But there's so much diversity. It's not just the biggest.
You're right. It's not just fatty.
It's not just the biggest bottle gnomes ever. It's not just the biggest army in the can in the terms of Avenger of Zendikar. You've got everything. But yeah, Halaka Worm is probably one of my favorite oath targets these days.
Halaka Worm, I just like this guy in green. I like him in Tooth and Nail type decks. I like him in Reanimator even.
I mean, the fact that he has Tremble means he's even fine to like Natural Order for.
Yeah, like he's probably on the low end of my Natural Order targets, but he's still very, very good.
It's all about not dying, really.
Yeah.
When you're trying to do these things. So, yeah, I mean, the fact that we skip 6 in cube.
We do have Craterhoof Behemoth. There was a question in chat. Craterhoof Behemoth is also in the cube. I had him today, actually.
We were going to get there.
All right, we're continuing up.
Let's just go back to the list version so we can hit all the points. Because, again, with greater than 6, there's a lot of diversity in the things we can do. And obviously, Craterhoof Behemoth is the card that just, in theory, just closes the game out as soon as it hits.
I very often hit people from 20 plus in the one-shot.
Well, that's very close, but it doesn't construct it, so that
yeah.
To be expected. So, again, you've got a clear finisher in Craterhoof Behemoth. You have the army in the can, you have the bottle gnomes, and you also have, what's the cleanest phrase for destroy non-land permanent?
The problem solver?
Or non-creature permanent. Root grapple?
the root grapple?
The root grapple.
The root grappler! That's his wrestling name. He's a root grappler.
And you got Terracodon, which is possibly the most diverse of all of these.
The down.
That you can make 18 power for yourself. You can knock out planeswalkers, enchantments, all these kinds of things. And you just happen to have a 9 power body attached to it. Again, look at all these things that green can do. I don't think we go past 8, do we?
In green?
Yeah.
No. There's no 9s.
I would just go to the list, and then we could look.
There's no 9s.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I wasn't sure. We were kind of devoid of 9s in general. So I know that on the last update we just added a 9 to the cube overall.
Oh, the other one is Woodfall.
Oh, yeah,
Primus.
Woodfall Primus.
Yeah. Woodfall Primus, again, being in the...
He's a bit of a riff on Terracodon. He's more resilient if you're playing against particular kinds of decks. Or you can do some really nasty tricks.
He's one of my favorites with Recurring Nightmare.
With Recurring Nightmare.
The Recurring Nightmare Survival of the Fittest deck is one of my favorite decks to draft. And I do it pretty regularly. And having a guy like this at the top end is always a good idea. Just today I was playing green-white, but I had Survival, and I had a Terracodon, I had Craterhoof Behemoth, and I had Elishnorn, along with an Animate Dead that I was splashing. So I could either just play the value chain kind of thing and work my way up the ramp, or just pitch an Elishnorn and animate it on turn 3 or whatever.
You're not even going to tell them the best play of the whole night, or when you took your opponent's Gristlebrand out of their graveyard to win the game?
I did do that. Simic Sky Swallower naturally ordering into it is just ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, so related green guys, I suppose we can go for gold dudes. Simic Sky Swallower being one of them. The kind of...
I personally think that tinkering for Leviathan is more egregious than natural ordering for Sky Swallower.
I feel like tinkering for Sphinx of the Steel Wind is more egregious than tinkering for Equal Leviathan. Because you could maybe race Equal Leviathan, you cannot race Sphinx of the Steel Wind.
I don't know. I think the last time I played like a Tooth deck, I actually ended up removing Simic Sky Swallower from my hand to cast Force of Will so I could resolve Tooth and Nail. So, I don't know.
The fact of the matter is, not to get too off topic, but Sphinx of the Steel Wind has protection from red, protection from green, the two colors that have the most artifact destruction. It is a black artifact creature, which blanks most of black's removal. It's white, so it can't be exiled, which was relevant today. It has vigilance and lifelink.
Results oriented.
But I'm saying, like, it's so... Like, at least Equal Leviathan, you can race, potentially. Because you're not gaining life, and it has to tap. It can't also block.
And against a lot of decks, you can block it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not efficiently, but you can soak up some damage. Okay. We have covered green's fatties. We have gone top to bottom on green. We have learned that you want to put a lot of emphasis on Mana Elves at the bottom. You want to make sure that the 2-drops in green stay away from the aggressive creatures, stay away from the pouncing jaguars. This is like tried and true stuff here. 3, make it utility, make it good. Go big at 4 and 5, and then go really big and find a way to ramp into it and cheat there with spells in the game of Magic. Now let's move over to the spell side of green. We've talked so much already about ramp. I mean, there's a full ramp package. I mean, in theory, for every Llanowar Elves, there's half of a rampant growth.
Yeah, and I think the ramp functions differently than the Mana Elves. The Mana Elves, you know, you're really looking your base green. You're looking for green mana, whereas with the ramp spells, you're looking to branch out into the other colors. It's enabling you to play spells that shore up some of green's weaknesses.
I mean, usually, but not always. That's kind of where, when we talk about 5-color green decks, those spells in green are what enable 5-color green decks. You're not playing a 5-color control deck or even a 5-color combo deck or anything with Birds of Paradises. You're doing it with Cultivate, Kadama's Reach, Harrow, Rampant Growth, even the new edition of Nature's Lore to go find all those dual lands. These are all things that certain decks are going to be able to evaluate at different tiers and is very diverse for the color. And it feels like it adds... That's an interesting one.
That guy is high as a kite right now.
We want Portal.
Look at the starter art for Nature's Lore, and you will see a high druid wandering around.
We want Portal Second Age, sorry. That is the one we run personally.
Yeah, 3 visits being the more expensive equivalent. Are they exactly the same?
Yeah, except one is white bordered and has some
Chinese guys on it.
Yeah,
and it's like 10 times the money.
For what, to me, I mean, not to knock on the artwork, is all around inferior.
Well, it's white bordered.
Already a huge problem.
And I mean, I don't know. I think the best art of any of these cards is still
What up,
high
guy?
as a motherfucker right here.
You have to understand that...
dude, this forest is...
The printing of those cards are all white border.
Oh, yeah.
There's no black border starter.
Yeah, but this guy is just high. It's so funny.
The 6th edition, I think they use the same artwork that they use in them. Anyway, if we go back to Cube List, we can take a look at the green spells. A lot of it is ramp, as you can tell. Then we've got some kind of outliers, like, you know, Eureka, which is, in a way, its own...
Eureka is its own deck, to be fair.
Yep. You've got your full complement of Garrix.
All the Garrix.
As you well should.
All the Garrix are good, and for entirely different reasons and entirely different places.
Well, that's because one of them costs a green, one of them costs 2 green, one of them costs 3 green.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
it kind of
they don't function similarly,
right?
Which is good.
Similar to Eureka, we've got Natural Order.
Can I just real briefly, since we're looking at this, I had Awakening Zone today. It was excellent. This is a new edition. Awakening Zone was a stellar player today.
Giant Growth and Borumber are not ambitious. They are awesome.
Giant Growth is horrible. Don't listen to him. Um,
Oh yeah, that's right. Usman cubes on Tuesdays as well, which is our new cube day.
oh, perfect.
So you're also in the mindset. That's very helpful.
Um,
Also, Usman, did you link me to something earlier? I couldn't tell if that was like a spam post or if that was legitimate. I think I got a message from you with a link in it with a password, and I couldn't tell if that was
talk about it later.
Porn or something useful.
Talk about it later.
Anyway.
Giant growth. So one of the problems that I want to talk about a little bit with green, we've been talking about its design and strengths and things like that. One of the weaknesses with green is that a lot of its design space in terms of the magic cards that are printed in the color green are pump spells, and most of them are not good enough, especially in a post-damage stacking world, to really warrant a cube inclusion.
I thought we were going to talk about archetypes and come back to pump, but we will talk pump now.
Giant growth being the prime outlier.
I mean, I like to add 4 of the 5 of the boons. Although recently we cut
Dark Ritual.
Yeah, so we're back down to 3 of the boons. There was a short time there where we had 4 out of 5. My philosophy about pump, especially green pump spells, is I want there to be some, because that's like an important part of Magic. Like,
I agree. I want there to be some. The problem is that green pump spells like this just don't do enough. And I mean, we talked about
that's a big non-damage stacking world we live in problem.
We've talked for a long time about how do you figure out what cards to cut in queue? Well, look at the stuff that gets 15th picked all the time. Giant growth is the number one, the worst offender of being like the super late pick. No one ever plays it, and I don't necessarily. It's not Wizards' fault necessarily. It's not Pump's fault even necessarily. It's just kind of the way the world works. We do play Slaughterhorn, and Slaughterhorn I think is a good example of kind of like what we've talked about. Having pump spells that are either multifunction. Another example would be something like Simic Charm, where it's a pump spell but has other modes, or a way that they inherently generate some form of card advantage while still being efficient. Either they have flashback like Sylvan Might, or you find ones that draw a card, or there's one that's
Wild Size.
There's one that's Scries.
The Ferocious Charge.
Right.
Those are still really expensive spells. I mean, for a while we played Primal Boost, which I thought was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Primal Boost was a good one.
Vines, in theory, feels like it would be good. The thing about Vines is it needs to be written the other way. It needs to be single green, pump your guy, double green, give something Shroud. Now in the chat we mentioned Briarhorn. Here's my problem with Briarhorn is that is not a pump spell. Every time there's a Briarhorn, you always want to get to 4 mana to play that card. You never want to just kind of run it as a 2. That means things have gone horribly wrong.
But I mean, like, it's the same thing as like Shriekmaw. Like, you want to be playing it as
it's not the same thing as Shriekmaw at all.
You want it to be a Necrotal, but sometimes it's Terror.
No, not the same thing as Shriekmaw at all. You can't cast Shriekmaw on the D to block.
Yeah.
And Briarhorn is a huge... You can just, like, throw down at 4 mana.
Yeah.
Become a 6/6.
Boar Umbra is an example kind of...
We miss Moldervine Cloak,
yeah.
And we want to kind of have an aggressive aura. And this plays into having all these 1-mana Accelerant creatures. The 1-mana Accelerant creatures are the best ways to enable, like, the Sword Cycle. And Boar Umbra is a bit of an extension to that, but it plays within a different space. Boar Umbra can just be jammed on turn 2 on your Llanowar Elves, if that's the way you want to go. It can be played in an aggressive curve to get on a guy to save it. I really like Boar Umbra. I hope it works out, just because Moldervine Cloak was in a different space we weren't working with. Yes, the chat has already mentioned riding the Dilu horse. This is not a pump spell. It's not a combat trick.
It's just a getting 2-for-1.
It's not just that either. The Dilu horse, to me, it's kind of like a glass cannon. It's kind of like you have to have all your plates spinning, and then you just like do the big finale. Like, you have to get into a scenario where you're like, okay, now my Community Colossus is 6/6 and unblockable. Everything is perfectly ready to go. Now you're dead.
Yeah.
You can't just like casually be like,
horsemanship is
unblockable. It's just unblockable.
Yeah, like, it's the best of the. It's better than flying. It's better than shadow.
And you have to understand that it's not a until end of turn. You ride the Dealer horse forever.
You're riding that horse
for those
for a
that
long
don't
time.
know what this card does, it's a green, 2 colorless.
+2/+2.
Creature gets +2/+2 in horsemanship.
Forever.
Right.
It's not an enchant creature because those don't exist.
It's a sorcery that
permanently modifies a creature to be +2/+2 and have horsemanship.
Thanks, Portal Free Kingdoms. You try to do something unique and on your own, and look what you did.
Layers. So yeah,
it's not a pump spell. I don't think it's. I like. There's a sweet altar I saw that somebody did where he's riding like My Little Pony, and they gave it a black border while they're at it. If I was going to have a ride with a dealing horse in my cube, I think I'd want to go that route.
I would set that on fire.
Do you really have a problem with bronies?
Yeah, they're embarrassing.
So are a lot of things people do.
Not as embarrassing as bronies, anyway. Aside from...
We don't have much pump left.
No.
We used to have a lot more pump, and we've tried a lot of it. I mean, Mutagenic Growth just came out.
Rancor is kind of an aggressive, kind of pump spelly sort of thing.
When I say pump spell, I mean like combat trick.
Yeah, I mean... Okay, so combat tricks specifically, there just aren't a ton of ones that stack up.
I don't want to pay 3 mana for a wild size to draw a card. I mean, the white ones are actually way better. Things like Gallantry and Shelter, and like even Bandage is a good card. Oh, it is.
I mean,
I think in 10th edition draft.
Relevant. I think that white, like having the like protection spells, Brave the Elements, etc., are better at this point than like +X/+X, unless you're actively just trying to like
because
smash
damage doesn't stack anymore.
And they're just more versatile. Like they're better against black, they're better against blue.
I just want to be able to go big with green. I mean, like a card like Giant Growth,
right,
can still be green's Lightning Bolt.
If you want to be going big with green, then stuff like Boar Umbra and Rancor I think are the better way to go, or riding the Dealer horse, like the permanent. Make your guy stronger and
by
bigger.
that logic, we should just add Moldavine Cloak back in.
They should make a Moldavine Cloak with Flash.
I mean, they have some things like that. There's like Serpent Skin or whatever.
Yeah,
no, that's Eel Umbra. I just don't like the card overrun. I just don't like it.
I mean, we do have Garrick Wildspeaker and Craterhoof Behemoth.
And I'm not saying anything's wrong with Moldavine Cloak. It's a bit of a nostalgia. So,
Giant Growth is definitely a nostalgia play.
We've got to move on. We're hanging on this way too long.
So
we've got ramp. We get it. Pump spells. You can see from this conversation, there's not really a great consensus on it. Most people don't run any. A lot of them are really expensive and kind of unwieldy. And over time, we've kind of cut that stuff. I mean, we'll probably, I'll probably put Berserk back in sometime soon, since little tricks like Worldly Tutor aren't working out. We might see something like Sylvan Might because it has buyback. Actually has flashback. I meant you can buy the effect back. But pump is kind of a weird area. That's most of green, other than kind of a lot of disenchants, which they also have access to. And you have more of like the build around me cards.
The examples, of course, being Natural Order.
Well, we got Eureka Natural Order.
The Hulk is exploding.
But you also have
Eureka.
Mildly Green Sun Zenith. Heavily Oath of Druids.
Oath of Druids being one of the big kind of... It's a green card, but it's played very differently than almost any other green card or green deck.
Right, because it's not actually green.
Right, it's blue. It's reverse the Efreet. The misprinted Efreet. Whatever. If Biff or
right. Sorry,
like it's like a
the revised Serendip Efreet that actually has all that green stuff on it.
So,
but Oath is spectacular. I mean, I feel like at this point we've talked a lot about Oath on the show. It's its own deck.
It's a lot of fun.
Maybe one of these days we'll just have to do like an Oath draft walkthrough to get the idea. So you got Oath, and then pretty much lastly on this list is Tooth and Nail.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can pick a Tooth and Nail or Survival. We all know Survival. So.
Survival is self-explanatory. But Tooth and Nail being the other one.
We are not jamming Search for Tomorrow. I really like Harrow, especially in the 5cc decks.
If I were
able to get 2 colors.
If I were to suggest another 3 mana ramp spell at this point, I would probably go with Growth Spasm. For variety's sake.
Variety of what?
Effects. It's effectively a 2 it's effectively a 2-mana ramp as well as potentially being a ramp plus a blocker, which is different. It ramp plus a guy to hold on equipment.
All right.
It's a little more varied than just get a land, get 2 lands, get 2 lands when you sack a land, get a land that's not a forest, get a land that is a forest. Like, you're supposed to do something slightly different than those. So, I mean, that would be at least my vote.
But those are all the types. I mean, there are a few outlier cards that go into different strategies, like Life from the Loam. I mean, obviously, with Regrowth, Restock, there's some implications with milling, and that kind of bleeds in between other colors. But green, as far as the spell side, doesn't have a whole lot to offer. That's why it's kind of nice that there's 3 or 4 build-around-me cards on the spell side, as well as just the power in the color fixing and ramp effects, so you can kind of touch across all those.
And green
colors.
also still has Plowhunter, which is one of my favorite cards.
That's a bit of a one-off. That and Primal Command are there for diversity.
At this point, well, Primal Command being just so flexible, it's almost always going to be good.
Hence the word diversity.
Plowhunter is just still, I think on our first or second show, we talked about our favorite cube cards. And this was like in my list because it's so satisfying to cast.
You dog on me all the time for how like other people's suffering in game is enjoyment for me.
Oh, that's absolutely true.
And yet,
I have my very, very few moments, and Plowhunter is one of them. Where
I've gone back and forth on Stunted Growth. I think
it was in for a long time.
As the cube got further away from a lot of control decks,
it got worse.
Right. I mean, when you're playing against all these like creature aggro
there are so many decks that
matchups
don't even have 3 cards in their hand by the time you have 5 mana.
That you just end up walking all over somebody's sentence. But yes, you're playing against these red aggressive decks, these white aggressive decks, even the green and creature aggressive decks, and you're looking at Stunted Growth being like, first of all, if it's in your opener, you're like, oh, I'm going to get there, I'm going to get him, and you finally get there, and you're like, ugh.
I got a card.
Or worse yet, you draw it off the top of your deck and your opponent's holding a card or something. And you're like,
right. It's like, it's such
Fallow Earth?
It's such a miserable, like, turn 8 top deck. And I think that's kind of one of the biggest drawbacks with it, is just, it's very brutal to draw late. What do you think about Bounty of the Hunt?
I mean, talk about stretching for value in terms of pump spells. You're really reaching with this one, I think.
Yeah, it just occurred to me.
If you don't put it on a Triskelion, then it's pretty terrible.
Yeah, I mean,
so block with your 4/4. You're like, they have an incoming Titan.
It is free. I don't know. I think mutagenic growth is also better than giant growth.
These are conversations we can have for the next update. We've already had to start a new list of changes.
I know. The escapees. You mean?
Yeah, somehow some cards kind of broke loose.
We changed 60, 70, 72 cards?
Yeah.
And then we looked and we're like, how did Sacred Mesa survive?
Yeah, that's not as egregious as Fissure. I don't know how. Something must have happened during the process. We've got about 20-25 minutes left. Let's go over some basic green plus X, green plus Y, green plus Z. Let's talk about how that shakes out. What's the most common green-white strategy?
Tokens.
All right. Is that it for green-white?
Tristani Summon.
Gavany Township type stuff.
Which works well with tokens.
You see a lot of... I mean, like, just today you drafted, like, Fauna Shaman into the kind of, like, pick-your-own-adventure stylings of... like, oh, do I want a Cloudgo Ranger? Do I want a Deranged Hermit? Do I want all this kind of stuff?
Tristani Summoner I have yet to see in action. Our cube changes were very recent. So I've yet to see this guy in action. However, if I had it today, I would have played it. I had all but this one.
So your draft deck from today included
5 of the 6.
Included Gaddock Teague, Knight of the Reliquary, Lockstone Smiter. You didn't have Pride Mage.
I didn't have Pride Mage.
You had 4 of them.
I had Sigarda.
So green-white decks, they're very far often creature decks. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I feel like we did a lot of this when we covered like the guild pairings. What did I do?
You don't like Voice of Pursuit.
It's not that I don't like it. It's that it thinks it's bad. You're putting words in my mouth.
The words that were there previously.
I do not think Voice of Resurgence is bad. Go back and watch our shows. I do not think it's bad.
Summoner Overlord Monoworm, largely that is for additional interactions with things like Reveler.
Not exclusively. Again, just having more bodies and being more diverse.
Yeah. It's ostensibly more interesting. The single army, you know, having more blockers if need be, or the way to get around more guys.
It might, one of these days, it might be $50 good, but we digress. Green-white decks, their creature decks, or their ramp decks, ramping into Wraths, into those Tooth and Nails, into those big things. I think there's got to be a good example in Magic's history of like a Wrath into Tooth and Nail deck. There was probably one of those in Standard, wasn't there?
Well, there was the Glarus Abdul deck. That wasn't
That's
really...
not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about casting Wrath of God and then eventually
Green-white.
casting Tooth and Nail. That must have been a thing. I felt like I was playing that deck at one point. It probably wasn't.
There's Green-white Monkey Slide. I mean...
In Cube, there is a strategy where you can cast Wrath of Gods and you can cast Tooth and Nail.
You're the only one who has ever done it.
It's a strategy in the Cube. But those, again, green-white decks, they're creature decks.
Green-red decks, also creature decks.
Red-green decks? Huh, I'm noticing a theme that we're probably going to see across the color combinations here.
Man, 2 red-green is a sweet casting cost.
Similar,
Great
similar,
Elf, Gorkland Rampager, Huntmaster. Huntmaster is amazing.
similar to Red-black 2?
Yeah.
Red-green, there's a lot more kind of space to play with what you want to do with it. It's mostly like burn decks with kind of like greens efficient big guys. You know, there's a deck where Urnum Djin's probably still really good. Yeah, you get kind of like reach and creatures from green that you wouldn't normally get from red. That's where you find your finishers.
I look at it as like kind of like you're playing a red deck, but you want to play this Bloodbraid Elf that you drafted.
I don't think it's exclusively like that.
No, but I mean like... Oh, also Gorkland Rampager, that's a pump spell, baby.
Yes, I agree. That is a pump spell.
Green-black is largely a control deck.
Is there nothing else to say more about red-green? See, the problem is that like I feel like we're redundant where we're like, also, by the way, red-green could be a ramp color combination. You got wildfire decks, so on and so forth.
I mean, that's going to be... The thing about green is every deck is a creature deck or a ramp deck.
Because again, there are so many creatures in green. If you're drafting green...
Green-black kind of looks like kind of control-y, but in reality, green-black is ideally the survival recurring nightmare deck.
Or it's big value.
It could be big value, but all of its value is derived from creatures, which just makes survival defense recurring nightmare even better.
Yes, ideally you want some amalgamation of those cards. I mean, you could still... The Oversold Cemetery decks, Oath of Ghoul decks can be black-green and be very good as well.
Blue-green might be my favorite.
I think it might be your favorite because it's the one that is the most diverse. Is the one that
Predator is cool.
It does the most different things. I mean,
it's tricky.
Yes,
it's very tricky, which I do like.
To me, blue-green is very much the I want to be like the standstill combination. It's the card standstill, not the event standstill in a game. Cheap creatures that have great tricks attached to them. Card draw from Edric. Pestermite tricks, gaining life off of Alpston Baloth, Aether Viling in your Spike Weaver.
It definitely, like, I do enjoy green blue very often. It's a color combination I really enjoy, but it's also green blue is one of the best color combinations for ramp, too.
Why is that?
For one of the best things you can do once you get a ton of mana is capsize the buyback.
Okay. I don't know if that's in the top 10 things to do once you get a ton of mana, but alright.
I mean, it's certainly a very powerful thing to do when you ramp up. Another one is Moloku. Like, being able to just puke lands into play and then Moloku to pick them all up and build an army like that is very good.
Those things are fine. I don't think they're incredible. They're fine.
If I'm playing, like, the more ramp I have, the more I want to be blue-green more than any other color combination.
Huh. See, it's interesting. I think if we had to rank the ramp, which is not fun to say, for green, with its 4 single party teammates, I think I would have put blue-green like at the bottom. I mean, maybe green-black's the bottom.
Blue-green opposition is also good, obviously.
Oh, yeah. It's... blue-green to me is very much the tricky, tricky situations, the tricky card choices kind of decks. Again, it's all about value creatures, because again, you can't really kill anything in blue-green ever.
Unless you have Master of the Wild Hunt.
Or you draft GT. The last few times I've had really good blue-green decks, they've happened to have that card.
Yeah, go figure.
I think red-green is the #1 deck I want ramp for. In two color ramp.
Right, I mean 5-color ramp is very
It's more common, actually. So again, like it's not a moot point, but it's not the most relevant thing. You've got red-green, then I think you've got white-green, then I think you've got, I guess, blue-green, and then black-green.
See, I disagree. I really like the blue-green.
Well, what's a given? Why? Other than capsize.
Other than capsize.
Which still seems very dirtily.
It's a great way to clear, capsize clearing the way for your green beaters, getting blockers out of the way so that you can kill them.
So you're still playing a bunch of little green and blue guys, despite the fact you're also trying to ramp into a capsize?
There's, a lot of the green guys that are little are also ramp. Like elves and things like that.
I don't think that strategy beats Goblin Guy.
Frost Titan is an
Lightning
excellent
Mauler.
thing to ramp into.
Yeah.
What are the other big blue guys?
I mean, it's obviously built into the blue-green color combination. You get kind of the bonus of
Consecrated Sphinx, obviously,
of refilling your hand. Blue is going to have all this card draw. So, as where it's green-white, you're going to draw those hands where you get all ramp, or all wraths, or all big creatures, and you can't piece it all together. With blue-green, it's the color combination that's least likely to draw too much of the one bad part of it. You've got the ramp, and you've got the card draw to refill that you always find with the interactions. I just find that with blue-green, the things you're, going over the top for are the most middle of the road.
I don't know. I'd rather be playing counterspells in Frost Titan than Wildfire. That may be a personal preference.
Counterspells are generally better than try to Wildfire. It's more of a problem with Wildfire.
I'm surprised that's not more of an emotional, moral dilemma for you between land destructions and counterspells.
Look, Eck, it's all about chocolate and peanut butter, and most often you just jam them together.
Everybody red counter burn Wildfire.
A classic archetype.
Meta drained into Wildfire.
So, yeah, with green, you got to remember.
What have we learned today?
Ramp plus creatures, and the last thing we could talk about. We're not going to go over 3-color combinations, shards, wedges, so on and so forth. 5-color green happens more often than you think, and it's fun to play. I mean, those of you that played Invasion, those of you that maybe even played Mirrodin or Shards of Alara.
5th Draw Unlimited.
Well, yeah, I mean, with Mirrodin it was mostly there were so many brown cards you could afford to just play some basic lands.
Well, then Sunburst.
Yeah, that was too little too late, though.
Not for Aaron.
He didn't have a great winning record.
No,
Let's just say I was always inviting him to draft. Sure, Aaron, go for those Skyreach Mantas. Which, back in Modern Masters, look out.
Yeah.
So, 5-color green, in some variety or another, is something that is a lot of fun to play. It's very popular with players. And with our cubes, there's a lot of stuff there to support it. And with any cube, at this point in time, I'd kind of expect it to be there because it is so fun. It's kind of universally accepted that you're going to have all these kind of color fixing, and then you're going to be able to one-off that Demon Fire, one-off that Swords of Plowshares.
It also always leads to the most hilarious deck building segment of the day, which is you lay out the pile, and someone across the table from you is so let me get this straight. You're going from Landwar Elves into double black into red, white, into Necrotal into Gisela, and then you have a Frost Titan also. You're a crazy person.
Sounds like a good deck.
Yeah, and it is sweet.
I mean, there's fun parts all along the road. It's hey, grab me 2 forests and 1 of each other basic land.
That's a common one.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of offshoots of that kind of color combination, but that's the other kind of major thing to be aware of when you're going to do green building for your section. I think if we were to try to break it down into keynote points for a PowerPoint presentation for green, it would be all the 1-mana ramp creatures you see fit to play. Try to avoid 2s and 3s that aren't really diverse or unique. Go big at 4. I don't know about 6, and then don't be afraid of 7 through 9, maybe.
How do we feel about cards like Civic Wayfinder and Borderland Ranger? Both of those cards have been in the past. Civic Wayfinder was in for quite a while.
I have turn 1 Black Lotus Civic Wayfinder, find a land, put into play.
Bold. You win that game?
Yeah.
Surprise.
I had one more land in my hand, by the way, that I then used to cast like Cold Steel Heart or something.
Oh, got there. You really worked out an amazing game plan.
Being down for 2.
So the thing about them is they're fine. They're obviously not very aggressive, not very beat down either, Grey Ogres. They're also kind of are on the low end of the value spectrum, compared to Yavimay Elder, Eternal Witness.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Civic Wayfinder is that it's very much like regular Magic set fixing. It's not acceleration. It's not, like you're Grey Ogring. You have your virtual vanillas. Those are cards that now when I see them in cubes, especially like the WotC cube, I really look at it as like this is just some color fixing that I really need for my 5-color deck.
Yeah,
it's not like
it's not exciting.
I'm not like actively looking to take those cards unless I'm in that very specific archetype.
Farhaven Elf is at least acceleration, similar to Wood Elves.
But I look at Farhaven Elf as kind of like the bastard rampant growth.
Right. I really want my. Ideally, the 2-mana ramp spells are so much better than the 3-mana ones.
Yeah, and that's why we try to get as many of the 2-mana spells as you can and as many of the 1-mana creatures as you can. So, to keynote it, as I was trying to do before, have a lot on ones, 1, 3, 4, diversity at 3 and 5, maybe skip 6 altogether, maybe try out a couple of things, go big 7 through 9, have those kind of build around me cards like I endorse Eureka and National Order, Green Sun Zenith, and Oath of Druid's Tooth and Nail Survival of the Fittest. Those are all-star build around me green cards. Then on the spell, that's really the spell side. Have plenty of ramp. I like plenty of disenchants. I like our cube to play a lot more like you're playing Saga Block Limited, and I think it works out.
I think you should. It's always a good place to be when the first disenchant in your deck is good.
Oh yeah.
We can talk later, but Sundering Growth. I'm a fan.
Sundering Growth?
Disenchant Populate?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was thinking of Sundering Vitae. That's the Convoke one.
One.
Yeah, that one's not good.
No.
Yeah, that card's fine. I was thinking there was another like hybrid card that we just completely overlooked because we weren't thinking about a hybrid recently. But I've kind of forgotten what that was.
Gift of Orzhova?
No. But interesting.
I don't know.
Is Assemble the Legion straight up Boros, or is that a hybrid? I think it's Boros.
It is Boros.
So it wasn't that one. Either way, that's it today for Philosophy of Green.
I feel like we need the Masterpiece theme music to chime in. Yes.
That's not a violin, but you get the idea.
That's very musical.
Now for everyone's favorite part of the show. You've all turned it off by now. You're not going to listen to me talk. Housekeeping type things. You can find us every week, probably coming in more often on Tuesday evenings on twitch.tv/Ecomon for these live shows. I can't guarantee we're going to be continuing to do this kind of color series. We'll kind of jump around back and forth, whatever's current in the news, but we'll try to keep it current. Check us out at ecomon.blogspot.com for old episodes, Cube updates, hopefully some new Cube content that we're working on outside of just the show itself. We'll want to bring new stuff there as Eck feverishly looks through multicolor spoilers. You could contact us at draftcube.gmail.com for any questions or things you'd like to cover us on the show. Follow us on Twitter at Tristan Gregson, at Young Mecha. And, yeah, I should close the blinds. I got a lot of computer glare.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, the reflection is not perfect. professional. But we were on a tight time crunch. Yeah, we could talk about Reckoner again. What is it? Yeah, we want to do more content. Oh, we biffed it with the. I'm putting that in the show notes next time. We got to do donation shout outs.
Ah, God.
Not
So
really
bad.
bad.
We're so bad at this.
A preemptive thank you to everyone who has already donated to our show and our continuing efforts to bring more diverse, bigger, better, closed-blinded content as much as possible. Yeah, I haven't been impressed by Reckoner either. When I first saw Reckoner, I was just like, I don't care. Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Take one off of
I was
Spider-Man,
really surprised
I
that
don't give a
that
shit.
card like took over the world for even a short time.
So yes, on the blog's page, at the bottom of this Twitch page, if you're one of the dozen people still chilling here as I ramble on now, you can donate to us. Please do so. We've got really cool video project ideas coming up soon. And if I ever clear time in my busy schedule, I'm going to go get our logo put together because it's bought and paid for. We just need to take that time. Thanks everyone for watching or listening tonight. If you're coming to us through MTG Cast, thanks for putting up with the extra business there. And don't bother with quiet speculation.